Andy, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So Andy can hear us. I just don't see Ed.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, there's Ed. All right, good. Ed, you can hear us?
Yes, I can.
Ed, you can hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Ah, we're not hearing Ed.
Andy, can you hear me?
Try now, Ed.
Can you hear me now, Steve? Steve, can you hear me?
All right, try now.
Steve, can you hear me now?
No.
Steve?
Try again.
Steve, can you hear me now?
No. Test.
Steve? Steve, can you hear me?
All right, can you hear me now, Ed?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Steve? Andy, can you hear me? You can? Can you tell them that you can hear me? You're on mute, Andy.
Andy, you're muted.
Stephen, I can hear Ed.
It's
Cannot hear you.
It's not a matter that he's muted. I can't pick him up in the system.
Andy, ask him if
I
he
tried
wants me to
it.
dial back in.
Stephen, would you like Ed to dial back in?
They hear each other, but we don't hear them.
Andy, I'm going to go out and come back in.
Okay.
No.
Stephen, Ed's going to leave the meeting and then come back in.
All right, Steve, can you hear me now? Andy, you can, right?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Steve, Leonard, can you hear me?
They're not responding, Ed.
Yeah, yeah.
You gotta go. Go ahead. Go.
Try speaking again, Ed.
All right, can you hear me now, Steve? Steve, can you hear me?
He can participate. Oh, he doesn't have this.
Steve, can you hear me?
You want to call him on the phone? We find out what number he wants to call. Is there a phone number for Stephen if I call him? If you call from there, I'll stick my mic next to it and it'll solve the problem. Ed, try one more time. Andy, can you hear me? Huh?
Oh, the microphone.
Yeah. That's on you. 9-1 or 8-1?
It should be yellow or not.
It's
Okay, and then microphone volume, does that matter? That's not working. That's not making a difference.
9-1 to get out. No.
8.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, now.
Then just dial.
Join with what?
Len, can you hear me yet or no?
Rose is on Zoom. Everybody has selected speaker.
All right, Rich, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I think we can hear him. Can you guys hear him? Ed,
Can you hear me, Len?
All right, we might need to. Put that up. So people can hear it.
Okay, let me do a test real quick. Ed, go ahead and speak again.
Yeah, okay, Steve, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Did you all hear him? Okay, so
Can he hear them? That's the other.
can you hear them, Ed?
Ed, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. good.
Ken?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's kind of low, but I can hear you well.
Okay, we'll still see if we can figure this out, but that's it. So Ed, if
Just
I,
let me know, I'm on mute on the other.
Yeah.
So there, but I'm on mute, so.
yeah, that's what I want.
That volume might go up.
Yep. Now it is. All right. I think we're ready to start.
All right. So I will call the October 24th, 2022 meeting of the Newtown Township Board of Supervisors to order. I will note that the board did meet in executive session this evening at 6 o'clock. And now we will go into the roll call. Mr. Neese.
Mr. Altieri,
Here.
Ms. Roberts Lightcap,
Here.
Mr. Partridge,
Here,
Mr. Russo,
Here.
Ms. Chanlis.
Here.
Your solicitor, engineer, and manager are here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Neese. We will now move down to the moment of silence. I think that it goes without saying that today we will bow our heads for a World Series championship. I think that that is something that is not controversial in a religious circle. So let's take that moment of silence right now. And with that, we'll stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now move down to section 5. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Motion was made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Chanlis. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Section 6, public comment for agenda items only. If there's any individuals who have any public comment that they'd like to provide related to an agenda item, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Mr.
Louis
Rosenthal.
Rosenthal, 20 Harrison. I have comments on the budget section, prior to advertisement.
Yep.
You want to do them now or?
Now let's have the presentation and then you can come up and make the comment. And that's also true with, I know that there's a contingent of individuals from Rhodes Avenue. What I would advise is that we hear the presentation and then you guys,
I think you can solve.
excuse me, Sawmill. There's a contingent from Sawmill. What I would recommend is that at the time that the presentation is made, I'll open it all up and then you can give public comment based off of whatever is discussed with regards to that study. With that being said, is there anyone here for public comment agenda items only outside of those two? Great, seeing none, we'll move down to section 7, the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the October 10th, 2022 meeting? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Chanlis, seconded by Supervisor Russo. Is there any board discussion?
I'm going to abstain since I was absent from the meeting.
Any other board comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All All opposed, motion carries 4 with 1 abstention. Section 8, resolutions of recognition. 8.1, consider approving resolution 2022-32, recognizing Eagle Scout achievement of Matthew DeAngelo, Supervisor Chanlis.
Okay, resolution number 2022-32, recognizing Matthew William DeAngelo on achieving the rank of Eagle Scout. Whereas Newtown Township recognizes and congratulates Matthew William DeAngelo, a member of Boy Scouts of America Troop 315, on his achievement of Eagle Scout, the highest honor bestowed by the Boy Scouts of America. And whereas Matthew DeAngelo is known by his family, teachers, employers, peers, friends, and neighbors to demonstrate Eagle Scout character traits to his service, to his community, morality, tolerance, and respect for diversity. And whereas Eagle Scouts are universally recognized to exhibit an increased tendency to participate in health and recreational activities and to show a greater connectedness to siblings, friends, neighbors, their religious communities, and to their country. And whereas leadership traits especially strong in Eagle Scouts have been demonstrated by Matthew DeAngelo through his Eagle Scout Service Project, his project Restoration at the Paper Mill House, which was performed on behalf of Newtown Township Historical Society, was to remove and replace the front and rear walkways for aesthetic and safety purposes. Whereas Eagle Scout Matthew DeAngelo has promised on his sacred honor to uphold and promote scouting throughout his life and to uphold his commitment to scouting values, including duty to God, service to others, and service to his community. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Supervisors of Newtown Township directs a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Matthew DeAngelo on the occasion of his Eagle Scout Court of Honor to be celebrated on Sunday, November 20th, 2022 at St. Anastasia Catholic Church, adopted this 24th day of October, 2022.
Motion was made by Supervisor Chanlis. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any board discussion? Congratulations, Matthew, and thank you for the project at the Paper Mill House. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, we will now get into presentations. 9.1 Sawmill Road presentation by the Township Manager, Mr. Neese.
Yes, I just would make note as go ahead back up to the top of the presentation. Yeah. Just make note as we go through this presentation that this presentation actually is, I'm kind of giving it tonight, but the chief has been involved as well as the Public Works Director and our engineer in reviewing where we are today. And so when we talk about staff recommendations, that came from all 4 of us coming back, just so that you kind of all know where we are. So first of all, I just want to spend a couple moments and talk about the traffic calming policy that kind of started, where we were with all of this. And so back in 2014, the township adopted the traffic calming policy. The goal of that policy is to create safe and attractive streets, reduce negative effect of motor vehicles on the environment, and increase quality of life in the township, promote safety for motorists and pedestrians and cyclists. And at the same, it's also to maximize the efficiency of local road network within the township. So that's the goal. And then we have some criteria that the street must meet in order for us to do traffic calming on that street. And one is that it has to be located in a residential zone. It needs to be classified as either a collector or a local road. Posted speed must be 25 miles an hour. It has to be greater than 1,000 feet in length. If it's a cut through, if there is cut through traffic, that traffic must exceed the daily average number of trips expected for that neighborhood traffic. If speeding is a concern, the 85th percentile must be above 25 or 30 miles an hour. And it cannot impact public. If it's going to impact public transportation, we need to take public transportation into account if we're making a change, and streets must be owned and maintained by the township. I would make note that when we first started this, and I'll actually address that in a further slide, Sawmill originally didn't meet that qualification. Sawmill does now. So the next thing was implementation. Typically, there would be an inquiry by the public from the community in that area. Then they would be given some information and would require at least 20% of those generally affected to sign a petition saying they were interested in moving forward for us to do and give them the information that would be needed for them to determine how big of a petition they actually needed. And that would be 50%. Traffic studies would be done. A development plan would come about. There'd be a public meeting, then there'd be a vote by those who live in that area, and it would require 70% of those affected. And then finally, there would be the construction of the project. Just make note, we've kind of skipped a little bit of that. The traffic calming policy allows the board to take action. And so the board took some actions on behalf of the residents of Sawmill on their own. And so I'm going to talk about those in just a minute, but I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of Sawmill. I think you all are. I'm sure you've been down it more than once, but as we're looking for the public, I want to make sure the public understood. If you look out at the edge, go all the way kind of on the south, what would be the western edge. Don't get it there. No, don't get it like that. There we go. Southwestern edge, you have 252, which is the mouth going on to Sawmill. And then you have the section of Sawmill that's actually most people know is like the 3500 block in Sawmill. That's the really flat area at the top, and also where's the widest at that point. And then if we go down to the next section or next screen, you'll see where if you still go from Boulder Creek off to the left, back a little bit further down, if you come almost to the bottom where it starts at the bottom of the page, Sawmill. Yep, right down there. So if you come back that way, that's all kind of going downhill. And until you get around the curve and you get past Timber Lane, and then it starts to flatten back out as you get down towards the end of Sawmill on the other side of the 3300 block. So if we can go to the next slide. Wanted to talk just real quickly. Sawmill is about 1.3 miles long, so it's one of the longer roads in the township. It is, if you break it down by feet in between each section, you can see what that breakdown is. And I wanted to show you that for a couple of reasons. One is I want you to pay kind of special attention from 252 kind of to where the Roberts and Boulder Creek area is, and then from Timber out to the township border. It's two fairly long sections. They're also tend to be where the flattest sections are. I would make note, again, I think I've already mentioned this, is from Boulder Creek down to Timber Lane. That's the area where there's the most curve, also the most drop on Sawmill. And so that area precludes us from doing something like speed tables to impact that area, because it's on the grade and you can't have speed tables on a grade that's as steep as what that is. So if we'll go on to the next slide, please. So over the years, we've had numerous complaints about speeding and pedestrian safety along Sawmill Road. I know it's been as long as George and I've been here. My guess is if we talk to some others who've been here longer, it goes back further than that. With concern, residents were directed to follow the traffic calming policy. That's when it was determined that the speed limit along Sawmill was greater than 25 miles an hour. The township took an action and reduced the speed limit from 35 to 25 back in April of 2015. And so we also determined there was some question, I think at the time, would Sawmill fall as an arterial road or would it fall as a collector road? According to our comp plan, it is a collector road. In 2017, we believe that's when it was, the township took addition of putting down the double yellow line down the center of Sawmill. In addition, it also did the white edges to try to narrow in the traffic a little bit, was trying to help reduce speeding. We also increased police department enforcement and took additional speed studies. And we found that the volume of traffic stayed about the same. They hadn't really reduced with any of the reduction of the speed limit or anything like that. And speeds were still above the 85th percentile. Or the speeds at the 85th percentile were still above the speed limit is what I should say. If we go down to the next slide, in 21 and 22, we actually, sure.
So that last sentence, is it supposed to be at the 85 percentile or
It's-
above?
So speeding at the 85 percentile was still up in the 30, 34s, 35, even up as high as 40, depending on when we did the study.
Okay.
And that's the 85 percentile.
Got it.
And so obviously you want the 85 percentile to be down around the 25 range on a road that's 25,
Got it.
if that makes sense.
Okay.
And so in 2021, the township moved into purchasing temporary speed tables. We purchased 2 temporary speed tables and 2 temporary speed humps. In 2021, Sawmill was one of the roads we targeted. 2 of the speed tables were installed between Sugar Maple and Roberts. And then in 2022, we purchased 2 additional speed tables. And when we did that, we installed all 4 on Sawmill Road, 2 on or 1 between 252 and Sugar Maple, 1 between Sugar Maple and Roberts, and then 2 down between Timber Lane down to the Radnor Township border, which is before you get to Green Country Drive. The next page, which is probably a little harder for you all to see, but basically what we did is we went through and we did a traffic study before we put in the speed tables, and we did a second traffic study after we put in the speed tables, and then we did typically when we did the ones in 2021, what we found was that the speeds prior to putting in the tables were in the mid 30s or upper 30s, and then we got into the upper 20s. But what I would note is both of those tables were within somewhere about 250 to 300 feet apart, and the speed was taken between those tables, which you would kind of expect as they were that close. And in fact, if you read the engineer's report that I believe I sent you, it actually talks about the fact that in order to accomplish a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, you need to be about 275 feet apart on that. When we did the 2020 study, we actually did do a reading before and a reading during and a reading after. And what we saw was an interesting thing. Even though there were 4 speed tables installed, the speed limits or the speed were only changed by about 4 to 6 miles per hour. And you can see that from the information on the table. So again, the traffic calming measures reduced the 85th percentile by about 4 to 6 miles per hour. However, it still remained well above the 25. Actually, one more slide up. Yep, keep going. Sorry, no, the other direction. Next slide up. Yep. Did reduce the speed by 4 to 6 miles per hour. However, with the 4 that were on there this year, the speed limit was only reduced to 32 to 35 miles per hour, still well above the 25 mile per hour speed limit. Based on that, and based on what the PA traffic calming handbook said, in order to get to the 25, we would need to be about 275 feet. That would require us to put in about 15 speed tables to achieve that. Based on the length, and that's why I wanted to call your attention to the length of that. Be about 8 at the, I think 8 at the bottom and about 7 at the top. One of the challenges, the driveways and the roads that intersect, I'm not sure would allow us to even do that because you have to be so many feet away from an entrance onto the road, whether it's a driveway and or a road. So staff believes that number of speed tables would adversely impact the road for purposes of, obviously moving traffic. So we have a recommendation coming back to you that we would increase our ongoing police enforcement in that area, potentially look up some more often having speed display signs. And then long term, we think we need to do maybe a project done in segments would be to modify, improve Sawmill Road streetscapes, narrowing to a consistent lane width all the way through, adding street trees, possibly curbing, constructing maybe even some bump outs that cause slowdown because people see the road coming in more, make it more pedestrian and bike friendly, to make it feel more like a neighborhood street. Then, you know, when you think about Sawmill, I think most people think about it kind of being equivalent to like Goshen Road and St. David's Road, you know, in regards to moving through the township. However, it really is a neighborhood road. There's a lot of houses off of that street. And so that would be what we think is probably the best way to achieve what you want if you're trying to get speed limits back down at the 25-mile-an-hour range. Any questions?
So the way we'll do this is we'll open it up to questions for the board. After the board is done asking their questions, we'll then turn it over to the public to do public comment. The one thing I do want to state, and I failed to mention this at the beginning, this was added to the agenda. It was always scheduled to be presented tonight, but it was not added to the agenda until this morning. So because of that, my recommendation is that we will not, my recommendation for me is that I think that it behooves this board to listen to the public comment that we have tonight, ask any questions that we have, and then come back with any sort of recommendation or guidance in 2 weeks. The reason for that is, as the neighbors are well aware, while there might be a group of individuals who are in support of speed bumps, there's always those individuals who are vehemently opposed to speed bumps. And because it wasn't advertised fully on the agenda, I don't want to open up the can of worms where someone says that they weren't notified or that they didn't know what was going on. So I don't think that my recommendation, at least for me, would be that we don't have we don't move forward on anything, but I think that we still go through the process tonight, ask our questions, allow the public to provide some public comment, and then, you know, come back with that. I have no additional questions based off of that presentation. I don't know if any members of the board have anything that they want to add or ask.
I just want to ask Steve, we at one point, the board and the township, I think before we started the speed tables, the speed humps, we had talked about, I think it was with Stantec, about looking at some kind of road improvements.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was a preliminary. I don't recall where that, I think, because then we felt like there was a need to do the speed humps just to try to help to see if that would work instead. Because I think at the time we were still, the fire company still owned that parcel at the corner.
So before you changed engineers, Stantec was actually starting to work on a solution there. They did some survey work, came up with kind of some plans. As you know, the township owns the piece at the very corner of Sawmill and 252, and then also owns the piece at Aspen. And so we were at the corner of Aspen and 252. The two together, I think, make close to 5 acres. And so the concept was, what would the township like to see that look like as a space? And one of the things we know is a problem at the mouth of Sawmill. We've had a lot of flooding issues at that very spot. It's also very narrow when you go to turn on there, which actually works to keep traffic slow right at that spot. However, it really is a problem for moving traffic in, because you want to get traffic off of 252 and onto Sawmill when they're coming on. And so what we looked at doing was actually widening that section a little bit, but also starting potentially, we've been talking about, I think almost since I've been here, it's been a part of the comp plan, it's been a part of your trails and greenway study, having some kind of walking / biking from that area all the way down and out into the Radnor parks that are on the other side, at the other end of Sawmill. And so that's kind of what led to some of our decision that we made as part of our recommendation that was in here. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? All right, we will move it now to public comment. If you have any public comment on this, come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and we will hear you out.
Hi, my name is Mark Rhodes.
Real quick, just make sure that microphone's on.
Green. Out of green.
There
Okay.
you go.
My name is Mark Rhodes. I'm at 3515 Sawmill Road. I am extremely disappointed with the outcome of the staff response to this. I think that I'll begin this by saying in the past 2 months, I've almost been hit by a car on 2 occasions walking my dog. I walk constantly between Roberts and Sugar Maple. On the last occasion, I actually had to dive into Desiree's front lawn because otherwise I'd be a dead man. So to sit here and do nothing, because this report absolutely says that there's a problem with speeding on Sawmill. And to sit here and do nothing except for continue on with what they've been doing, you guys have been doing a great job. They sit in my driveway. The police sit in my driveway. They do all the speed traps there. I watch them. I work from home. I watch the cars go by. I actually listen to the engines rev as they come up, and I have a little game with myself that I predict that what car is going by will be nailed by the cops, and I'm pretty good at it now. I'm really good at this. But to do nothing is not an option. To continue monitoring, if speed bumps can't be done because of the lower portion of Sawmill is 303,200 and you got 275. I understand it, but let's do some speed bumps up top, sprinkle in some stop signs, but to do nothing is not the right thing for this board to think of doing, or staff at this point in time. I think also, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't seen the engineer's report. I'd like to get a copy of it. I will do a right to know request for the copy of the engineer's report. I think it's flawed. I said the lower portion of the 3300 block of Sawmill, the speed sensors were placed on the speed limit signs that were literally right before and right after the curve. A curve is a natural deceleration point. So it wasn't properly monitored compared to where they put the speed humps. Same thing was done on Sawmill at 20 and the 2022 study is the speed humps were all the way at the top, 100 feet on each side of Sugar Maple, yet the monitoring devices are all the way down at the other end. Okay, the 2020 study absolutely mandates it lowered it 10 miles per hour on the, I think, going westbound and 9 miles per hour going eastbound. It absolutely did exactly what would happen in the 3500 block. We really should consider about doing, speed bumps up top, stop signs. I understand that the between down in the Timber and Boulder, because of the elevation grade and everything, you can't do them there, but you can put stop signs. We need to just really aggressively approach this problem on Sawmill, or else someone's going to get killed and someone's going to die. Suzanne Gallo, I don't know if her husband's here, but her dog got killed right across the street. 2 dogs dead. People going 25 miles an hour don't kill dogs, don't almost hit people walking. So basically, I believe a lot of 3500 blocks here. Right, we know, we live this every day. We watch the cars. I ask you to please, this is not a long-term plan of starting. I've spoken with Mr. Neese. I know he's got some great ideas about the long-term. We need short-term before someone gets hurt. That's all I have to say, and I'd appreciate you reconsidering it and moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else with public comment?
Good evening. I'm David Bassett from 3549 Sawmill. Just like to speak in support of stop signs on the road. Like to echo my neighbor's comment on walking the dog or running down the road, especially in that area between Sugar Maple and Roberts. It is a speedway. The cars are going 45, 50, 55 miles an hour. It is unsafe for children, unsafe for walkers, unsafe for cyclists, unsafe for pedestrians with animals. I think stop signs at Sugar Maple, Roberts, maybe at Martin's are a very good first step to have the right sort of ongoing regulation of speed in that upper part of Sawmill Road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Neese, can we pull up the map again so we can see Sugar Maple, Roberts, so we can kind of get, so we can, while they're talking in this area, we can see the topography.
That one, right. So if I can, if you don't mind, and if I can borrow this, and I realize those at home, I'll ask Rose if you'll follow me. So right here is Sugar Maple, so that everybody can see it. And right here is Roberts. We know that this area, basically from right about here, the road widens and goes wider down to about here. As you're starting to make the turn and go down. Let's stay there. Yep. And so, So as we've been talking, we've been saying that we think that the answer is to really work this section to here. And we're not saying make this 5 years, 10 years. We're saying we should do this soon. I mean, this is staff. I just want to be clear that the staff is not saying push this out for a long period of time. We think we need to move forward with this and do this in segments and get this done for up this area first. And that's where we would focus on it. But this is the area that we really see. If you were to drive down Sawmill, and I hope you all have at some point, you get past this spot and everything just opens up. And all the houses are further away from the street. It gives you the sense that there's this open ability to go. And it is a problem when people are walking. It is a problem when people take their dogs out. I get that. What I would say, we have never considered stop signs as a traffic calming. There's some issues with that. If you look at the PA traffic calming, stop signs are typically not a part of traffic calming. And that's why we didn't recommend stop signs in this. And based off of accidents, the chief would, I think, come back and say, we haven't had enough. And what's enough, right? But we haven't had the accidents in this area that would justify putting in stop signs where people are coming through. It really is a matter of how fast people are driving down Sawmill.
Let me ask, Steve, let me ask you a question. Can you go back to that screen real quick? Can you point to where the speed bumps were installed in 2020, where there was a little bit of
I'm going to let you come up, if you will, because your team is the one that actually installed them. I would be wrong.
Do that one more time, sorry.
So between Sugar Maple and Roberts.
And where were they placed? Just, I mean, the whole, I mean, we all know
In the
it.
most recent time.
We all know it, but
They were placed on this side of Sugar Maple and then on the other side of Sugar Maple.
okay.
You do need to have 150 feet in between from an intersection where you place them.
Okay. All right. Anyone else for public comment? Come on up, sir.
Hi, my name is John Lozano. I live at 3514 Sawmill Road. Your ruling today was extraordinarily surprising and very, very saddening. Surprising because everyone who lives on that street saw an incredible increase in safety with the speed bumps. And we thought, well, everyone would get that. And no, you didn't. Our first petition from our neighborhood to this township was in 1991. 1991, it was signed by over 90% of the people on the street and favorable towards putting in stop signs for the safety of our children. It's now 2022. We're still at it. That is really sad because it's about people's lives. Sawmill Road was probably built in the 1700s for horses and carriages. It is now a modern road. It's a road in which we now have 1,000 homes in Lissitor, Episcopal Academy, and a light at the corner that obviously feeds people from those 1,000 more cars down our road. Many of us said we had a quiet country road that is now a highway. And when you do cut through, you don't slow down, you want to get through the road. So the natural inclination is to speed. And so they do. You know, our road's 26 feet wide. There's a white line to walk alongside the grass. That's 30 inches on one side in front of my house and 11 on the other side. That means at 30 inches, you have to stay right there and pray that that car stays straight. Or if it wavers a little, you're dead. At 11 inches, it means part of your body is actually in the street when you walk down there. That's scary. The only safe thing is to climb on someone's lawn, and some lawns have a decline where you have to climb off. If you go down Sawmill Road and just walk, that white line disappears because the earth at that side has gotten into the road and covers it. There's no white line, there's no place to walk. If you go down that road, you walk with the cars. This is our road. And we have been at it since 1991, find safety for ourselves and our children. The last meeting when I was here, 2015, the police did a report on our road, said there's 6,000 cars a week, 20% of which speed. That's 1,200 cars a week that speed, 4,800 cars a month, and 62,400 speeding cars a year. That time it was 50 and 60 and even 73 miles per hour clocked. Even at 34 miles an hour, which is 9 miles above 25, and no one does 25, we know that. US Department of National Highway and Safety Administration says that a pedestrian struck at 34 miles an hour would have a 60% fatality rate. 60% will die. And you can imagine the injuries accrued upon someone who was just struck and not killed. We have comparisons. Rhodes is right there in Newtown Square, similar size, has a curb, grass buffer, sidewalk. Sawmill Road has no curb, no grass buffer, no sidewalk. Rhodes also has stop sign at 25 miles an hour. You can't go down that road more than 25. Green Country Drive behind Sawmill Road is 33 feet wide. That's 7 feet more with a curb on both sides, flat terrain and no cars. Roberts Road, identical to us, at 25 miles an hour, has speed bumps. Has had it for years, and no one goes above 25 miles an hour. So you have a choice here. Are you going to just bury this again since 1991, again, turn us away, and wait for that fatality, which will be on you and the township? So it's a sad day if that happens. Maybe you don't want to do speed bumps. I don't know. Do something. Put things in that are safe for people, not because occasional person doesn't like a speed bump, but it slows them down. How arrogant and self-centered is that? Let's get to where we should be. About people, it's about safety, and it's really time we do something about it. And there's so many things you could do. And we're just asking once again.
Just two quick questions. What did, I didn't catch your name. What was it?
John Lozano,
John, all right. And your address again, I'm sorry.
3514 Sawmill Road.
All right, perfect. And then I do just want to just one point of clarification.
Yep.
So we have not made a decision. As I said, we're taking all this information now. We were presented the same information that you were. We did have one of the documents prior, but it makes no sense for us to really dive into it until the presentation is made.
Also take a walk when the snowplow comes.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else with public comment?
Hi, I'm Patty Bassett, and my husband spoke earlier. I live in 3549 Sawmill Road. I just wanted to talk a little bit about, I agree with all of my neighbors. It really is very dangerous, and it's not a matter of, 30 or 35, especially in front of our house. I mean, they're going 55. There's no question about it. But I wanted to talk a little bit about speed bumps. We recently had speed bumps right in front of our house. What we have found, though, is that people will speed in between the speed bumps, and some people will ignore the speed bumps. And there are big trucks, actually, like landscaping trucks, come on Sawmill. They are bumping up and down. I mean, they're ignoring the speed bumps, and we have school buses there. And so, and Sawmill is such a long road. how many speed bumps need to go in, because people will speed in between the speed bumps. So I'm a huge advocate of stop signs. I'm not sure exactly why it wasn't considered before, but it seems a lot of the roads which are, you know, as long as Sawmill, it seems to make sense that a few stop signs would help a lot. So that's my vote, but I agree with my neighbors. Something has to be done. So thank you for.
No,
letting me
thank
speak.
you. Chief, do you want to just flesh out, just so we're clear on the stop signs, why stop signs are not used under the PennDOT regulations for traffic control? Not saying it's not something we're not going to look at, but I just want to make sure everybody's working off of the same information.
It's generally speaking, stop signs are not traffic calming devices. They are to prevent accidents. They're placed at intersections so that traffic can move from one road out to the other road safely. So if there was traffic having a hard time getting out of Sugar Maple or Roberts Road, there were accidents occurring because of that, that's where you would put a stop sign.
Thank you. Anyone else with public comment?
David Phillips, 3521 Sawmill Road. We're pretty much smack dab in the middle of where this flat spot is that goes across there. Longtime resident, originally was not in favor of the speed humps. After seeing the first set of speed humps put in there, the traffic decline speed was amazing. Between them, they were actually on both sides of my house, and you could literally see and hear the cars slowing down as they went through. If I could ask the chief, how many times in the last 2 months have speed traps been set up on Sawmill Road?
Just real quick, and you can answer that if you want, but just moving forward, we're not gonna do a public question and answer.
Oh, okay.
Just so you know, I'm not trying to sound terse. I'll let him answer that, but I just don't want to open up the floodgates.
And if
where
you can't, then
it's
that's
like-
no big deal. I'm just saying, it's something that does make a difference. If you're gonna have a speed trap there once a week, then it's probably gonna end up slowing people down because they're not gonna know when it's gonna be there, and they are gonna slow down because they don't want to get a ticket. The speed humps make a huge difference with that. I have several grandchildren, and so do several people in the neighborhood. To get to Sugar Maple, if you're gonna walk in one of the back roads, if you're gonna go over to Lister and walk to Lister, you have to walk along. And when you have two cars passing by on a 26-foot road at the same time, there's not a lot of room for, if you got a couple little kids that are walking along there. And it's not safe. And like John Lozano said too, somebody is going to get hurt eventually. It is, if you're talking about an average speed of 40 miles an hour for everybody going 30, there's one person going 50. You can sit out there on a Sunday morning and there'll be cars going 55 miles an hour. The advent of having Episcopal open has probably doubled the amount of traffic, and between Lister and Episcopal, it's probably doubled the amount of traffic from the time we moved in 1994. So something does need to be done, whether it's stop signs. We don't need 15 speed bumps on Sawmill Road. Whoever put that as a suggestion it's ridiculous, but you need some. Whether you need 4, whether you need 6, whether you need to put 2 of them on there, you need to do something because it needs to slow down some of the traffic before somebody gets hurt. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Rosenthal.
Not in my neighborhood at 20 Harrison Drive, but I would support anything that the township can do to slow that down. I too have grandchildren, and we're starting to see speeding in our neighborhood. And whatever can be done should be done. The point I would like to make, because I make most of my comments on development and finance issues, there was a traffic study I'm sure somebody looked at and had written and was approved at the time the development was done at Lister. I would encourage the township and the supervisors to go back and see where that traffic study went wrong. And from that learning, remember that the next time some traffic study gets submitted as part of a development plan.
Traffic studies, they don't factor in speed, but your point was still well taken. None of us were on the board when Lister and Episcopal were approved, but traffic studies don't usually give you a breakdown of what cars are going to potentially travel. They just give you the volume or anticipated volume, the impact on there. It's still a good point. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, I don't know if the administration wants to add anything else. If not, I'll turn it back over to the board if they have anything else to ask. Before I turn it up, 1 second. Go ahead.
So I think I would let your engineer speak and share about stop signs as well. I know that Chris has spoken, but there's some detail as to why that he could add.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, so the decision that the chief was saying to use a stop sign, that is a device that is used for the control of traffic. So for moving vehicles through an intersection in a safe manner, and usually to move a vehicle from the side road onto the main road. And there's very specific called warrants that have to be established to use a stop sign. And that has to do with volume on a road, different sight lines for vehicles trying to move into there. And if you look at the guidance on from PennDOT with regard to the stop signs, it actually very explicitly says, although they are unfortunately used very often for speed, they are explicitly for traffic, and they guide you towards the Pennsylvania Traffic Calming Manual, which explicitly says stop signs are not a consideration to manage speed.
What the PennDOT publication actually says on that issue is that it actually has the reverse effect. And it tends to make people speed up between the stop signs, and it actually increases accidents when they're used as traffic control. That's what PennDOT says.
And actually, to that end, I would speak to the same, my own neighborhood. At the end of my street, they have put up stop signs on a successive, like every other block. And I watch cars rolling through them on a regular basis. So it's when you start using them inappropriately, you end up with disobeying of the traffic law. You end up with a scenario where vehicles are a little more unpredictable as you're going through the intersection.
Okay. So now we'll say some things from the board, and then I think we'll finish this. One thing I just want to make note, and I'll just say my last piece, and then I'll ask if any of the other supervisors have anything to say. Obviously, we need to do something here, and I don't think anyone on this board is saying that we don't need to do anything. And I apologize for the individual. I'm looking right at you. I can't remember your last name, but John. The beauty and the curse of local government is that, where there's one group of people who are adamantly in support of something, there's also the other side of people who are adamantly opposed to it. And one thing that we can sometimes get accused of is that we're ramming something down someone's throat, and we didn't give all sides the opportunity to be heard. That's why my suggestion was just because it got added to the agenda this morning, that my recommendation would be that we don't make a decision tonight and we come back and revisit it in 2 weeks, so that if there is anyone who has a contrary opinion, they feel as a resident that they can voice that opinion as well. I think that the speed studies show, right, that something needs to be done. What is that needs to be done? Quite frankly, I think it gives this board greater opportunity to discuss that over the next 2 weeks privately among ourselves, try to come up with a solution, if any, that will be both quick in the long term, and something that we can something in the short term, and then something that we can work towards more permanently in the long term. I don't think that those two are mutually exclusive. I think we can achieve both objectives. So that's just my thought. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add. I know that Supervisor Partridge said that he wanted to add something, but if there's anyone else from the board, I think you speak now, or we'll move on.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ed.
Okay. Yeah. So, listening to all the neighbors, I mean, I lived in a neighborhood over 14 years and certainly can verify everything that was said. I would take walks and have to jump off the road. The problem is certainly, exacerbated between Roberts and Sugar Maple. Even on the other side of Roberts, before the curve, there's cars moving pretty good, down on that end towards Martin's. But I think it's worse in the neighborhood where all these folks are, on the 3500 block. And again, several times, on my walks, I would have to kind of dive out on the lawn to get out of the way. I heard I hear the professional opinion from the stop sign, and, I'm certainly no expert. I just think, there's gotta be, they're picking up speed, after coming around the bend, towards Roberts, from Martin. And then on the other side, after, coming on to, Sawmill from 252, once the road wide, right before Sugar Maple, that's the other side where they're picking up, speed. And, the car's going 55, 60, 65, which I'm certain of. It's between Roberts and Sugar Maple. So, I don't know, just logically, if there was a stop sign at those two intersections, but again, I hear what the experts say, and, I'm certainly not an expert, but, can certainly verify the problem, as everyone in the neighborhood articulated. So I think we need to really think of a viable solution and do something about it. Because, we can put officers there in the driveways and so forth, and that'll, curtail the problem, but obviously that's not a permanent solution. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much, Ed. All right. I think I did see a hand go up before. Are you guys all done? Mr. Ferguson. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bob Ferguson, 3501 Sawmill Road. I've been on Sawmill Road since 1983. Just seeing cars come around the bend and crash in my front yard. Almost take my daughter and my wife out. Okay, Sawmill Road. Gentleman wants to say stop signs are slow. People go through them. They're going to. We would all settle for stop signs and people coasting through the stop signs. Because right now they're going through. There's not a stop sign, 50 miles an hour. You put stop signs up and they coast through it. Guess what? They're not doing 50. They're doing less than 25. We'd settle for that. That's a plus. That's a gain for Sawmill Road. Okay. And people want to tell me stop signs aren't for traffic. You can go over here in Radnor, go in Malvern. Every single street that has speed bumps have 3-way stop signs at every street. Every single one of them. Every township around here. We've been fighting this since 1983. My wife was up here in the early 80s trying to get this through the board to slow the speed limit down to stop signs. Here we are almost 40 years later talking about the same freaking thing, guys. What is it? Is a speed bump going to break the plow? Is a stop sign going to make someone slow the hell down? I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. We shouldn't even be having this conversation. Any one of you go over on any day and sit on the street, get out of your car, to stand behind a tree and watch the people say, I want to live here and walk with my kid dog. The way these people are going down the street, I guarantee you wouldn't want to live on my street. It's bad. Please, just go look at it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. All right. With that being said, we will just jump down to 13.5, and I will make a motion to table that, which means this will be on the agenda in 2 weeks under old business. It again will give this board the opportunity to consult with the administration. We will be able to have conversations among ourselves, and then so it will be on the agenda at our November meeting. So we will have again, more concrete sort of thing. Again, I get it; it's frustrating. But I think it would behoove us all to take the information, digest it. I know that sounds ridiculous considering that you've been doing this since 1981 or 1991. But this is a different board. This is what we have, and this is, I think, the best path forward for everyone. So with that being said, I appreciate you all being here, and we'll move on with the rest of the meeting. Thank you. All right, we'll move down to reports. 10.1, report from the police department. Chief Lunn, do you have anything to add or subtract? Or add or supplement to your report? No. Thank you very much. 10.2, report from the fire department. Chief Everloff, do you have anything to add or supplement? Thank you very much. 10.3, report from Public Works. Mr. Sharretts, leaf collection. Everyone's favorite topic.
It is, good evening, George Sharretts, Director of Public Works, with a brief leaf collection update. So the leaves are beautiful this year, but most of them are still on the trees. They haven't really started coming down the way that we would have thought of. So as a result, we were scheduled to start this year our zone 1, which is, you see up on the map, is the northern tip of the township. We did a reconnaissance late last week, over the weekend, and again today, just in a pickup truck, and saw that the vast majority of properties did not even have piles of leaves out. There's so many on the trees. So what we're going to do is postpone zone 1's collection 2 weeks. We're going to continue the whole rest of the schedule the same as it was going to be, but we're going to do zone 2 next week. We're going to do the week after that, zone 1 and 3. It's going to be a lot more work. It's probably going to be long days and a couple weekend days in there to catch up. But it doesn't seem fair to the people that live in zone 1 for us to complete our collection, and most of the houses not really get anything collected from them, because the next time we would be back there would be after Thanksgiving, and that's not fair to the folks that live there. So again, the concept is we're going to take this week's, push it back 2 weeks, do a double at that point, and then keep the rest of the schedule that way. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but that was the plan.
Are you still, as you've done in years past, doing weekly updates?
Yeah, so we're actually doing daily updates.
Daily.
Once we do the collections, once we really kick into the collections, we're going to do daily updates. And I should say, because we went and scouted around today, we identified where there were some piles. We're not going to let them sit. We're going to go grab them. We just don't want to send all 4 trucks and a huge team of rakers and use all that diesel fuel just driving around knowing that there aren't that many leaves to collect. But we're gonna try to grab the ones in zone 1 that we saw today.
Let me ask you this question. I know that when we had COVID, we didn't do leaf collection, so individuals would drop off their bags, right? And I think if individuals, let's say they forget to rake them, or for whatever reason, are they still able to bag them in compostable bags? Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. So we do starting today, and we have a stack out in the Public Works building now, where people can drop off Monday to Friday, during the hours that we're there. They could drop off bag leaves, and then there's a handful of weekends that will be open that they could drop them off as well.
Got it. George, do you want to give any other tidbits of information with regards to leaf collection? I know it's the most exciting and frustrating aspect of some of this besides snow plowing.
Yeah, it's a challenge. So overall, it takes us 4 weeks to get through the township once. That's why we break it up in the 4 zones. We go through the township. Ideally, we go through once. We do not schedule leaf collection during Thanksgiving week, just because we use that as a time to catch up. And if there was rain and we're behind by a day, we'll catch up during that point, reset, and then right after Thanksgiving takes 4 weeks so that everybody's leaves are picked up by Christmas. That's the concept.
Perfect.
Sure. So the leaves, because we don't have our own leaf site, we drive them down to Haverford Township. We have a partnership with them, but that means we have to go all the way down but Westchester Pike to Haverford. So we have scouted out several potential leaf sites. We've been trying to work with DEP to make sure that they meet all the requirements. They're all owned by other people, so we do have to navigate that. One of the things that's in the budget proposal for next year is some consulting help to try to drive that home and finish it off.
Any other questions from the board? I would just add that I appreciate the updates. I do push that out a lot, and all of us push it out to our neighbors and everything. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
I never realized how contentious leaf collection could be until I got elected to this board. It is an interesting process. All right, 10.4, report from the building codes officer, Mr. Rezchak. I know you're on the phone. Do you have anything you want to add or supplement?
I have nothing to add.
Hearing none, we'll move to the report from the.
I don't.
Is that you, Andy?
Yeah, I'm here. I have nothing to add.
Report from the finance director. No supplement or addition from that one.
There's no supplement unless the board has a question on the finance report.
Seeing none, we'll move down to the library director, Ms. Caruso. Do you have anything you want to add or supplement? Congratulations on an awesome summer, couple of months, record turnout. Report from leisure services, Mr. Enhow. Do you have anything you want to add or supplement? Thank you very much. Report from the township engineer, Mr. Johnson.
Nothing to supplement.
Thank you very much, sir. Report from the Township Manager, Mr. Neese.
I believe everything that we're going to talk about is on the agenda tonight. We've already talked about Sawmill and we're going to talk about the budget. I don't have anything else that I need to add unless. the board has
Brevity is
something.
appreciated, Mr. Neese. I thank you for that. We'll now move down to payments. 11.1, can I get a motion approving the $895.75 escrow release payment to Thomas Robbins at 410 Lister Road for a completed grading project?
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Section 12.1, I will make a motion to approve the bills on check register A dated October 24th, 2022, totaling $274,123.08.
Second.
Motion was made by the chair, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 12.2, I will make a motion to approve the bills on check register B dated October 24th, 2022, totaling $6,698.56. Motion was made by the chair, seconded by Supervisor Chanlis. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Section 13, new business. 13.1, I get a motion approving the proposed 2023 meeting schedule for all boards, commissions, and committees.
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Mr. Neese.
Yeah, I would just make note that as the staff has been looking not only at our calendar, but all that goes on, we've recommended making a couple changes to when committees are meeting. One, to conserve staff energy in that if we put more meetings on the same night, staff is already here. It helps with that. Also, we've ran into problems with having room for people who wanted to use the building, including our own selves for other meetings, and trying to figure out when we can schedule them. Just even like the finance meeting for the public, we were trying to find a day and had to move it into November. So the couple real quick changes that we would do, we would move Trails and Greenways from a Tuesday night meeting. I believe they're the second Tuesday to the first Thursday, and they would be at 5 o'clock. And then Parks and Rec would be at 7. The board meeting would stay on Monday nights at 7 o'clock with your 6:30 executive session. On the third Monday would be executive session and municipal authority. Thursday of that week would be on the Wednesday of that week in the morning would be the Finance Committee. On Thursday of that week, the third week of the month, we would move Environmental Advisory Council to 5 o'clock and right before the Zoning Hearing Board at 7. And then again, you all meet on the fourth Monday. The fourth Tuesday would be the Historic Preservation Commission, as well as the Bartram Bridge Preservation Board. And then the fourth Thursday, we would move the Shade Tree Commission from, I believe it's the second Thursday, down to the fourth Thursday, and they would meet right before the Planning Commission, which would allow for developers to actually go and present to the Shade Tree Commission their piece and then come before the Planning Commission right afterwards. And so you could potentially have two actions on the same night for that. So that's the concept behind moving them. Again, it allows for staff who fill those roles to be out less nights, but it also hopefully makes it a little bit more condensed, even for those of you who serve as liaisons, and you maybe would divide up accordingly so that you would also have that. But it would also allow people to be here and have freedom more on other nights, like for other meetings that we've been trying to have related to having the committee chairs meet, or when we do a public finance meeting, or we do a public rail trail meeting or something like that.
Any questions for Mr. Neese? Let me ask you this question. Have you had conversations with any of the board or commission members yet? So I guess what I'm asking is, do we want to do this before you speak to them, just in case there's?
Well, maybe do it with a contingency, like you're all supporting it. Like if we know that you support it, then I can go back to those boards and commissions and say, here's what we're looking at as the time frame, and give you a feedback as to what impact that would have on
So
it.
if you get like a mass exodus, then we
Yeah,
can
if you had
reevaluate.
30,000 people leave, but
All right, we'll regroup after that. All right, perfect. So with that being said, any other board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. 13.2, speaking of mass exoduses, consider accepting the resignation, consider accepting the following board commission committee resignations. Jim Lancelotti from the Finance Committee effective January 1st, 2023. Harry Bryans from the Environmental Advisory Commission effective immediately. Bruce Killen from the Environmental Advisory Commission that will be effective December 6, 2022. And Lynn Elston from the Library Board as a trustee effective immediately.
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. I will admit that, or I will note that of these four, three of them are moving out of the township, unfortunately. And the other one just has other commitments. So we appreciate the service that all four of these individuals have done for our community. And while we are sorry to see you leave, we wish you best of luck in your future endeavors. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed,
Aye.
motion carries unanimously. 13.3, consider approving Stony Knoll using 2,925 gallons a day of the excess sewer capacity from Melmark. So let's do this. Let's have an explanation on this, and then maybe the board will make a motion on it.
Okay, so I'm not sure you didn't act on this when you did their land development plan, but I couldn't go back and see a clear action, so I wanted to go back and have you do a clear action.
And do me a favor, Steve, since we have Supervisor Chandler is new, and I don't think she was on the board when we did Melmark, so you might have to walk that back a little bit.
Okay, so Melmark is the property on would be the western corner, if you know where that is, if you go out White Horse Road, and I think it turns into Whalen at that point, and it's all the way down at the very end. They originally had 25,000 gallons a day that they had set aside. They have done their expansion. They think they're kind of built out to where they're going to be. They've done their new education space, and they've done all of that, and they come back and say, we're only going to be using a little over 19,000. I think it's 19,500 or something like that. And so they have released the difference between the 25,000 and the 19,000 back to the township. And when Stony Knoll came in, Mr. Nolan with Stony Knoll's project, he was proposing putting in public sewer, which is actually a positive thing versus doing more on-lot services that we would later need to make public. And it is in an area when you did your plan that it would make sense in that you could connect through into Echo Valley, go through that pump station, or even through Hunt Valley Circle, and through and come down over into Echo Valley and then up and out of the township. So the idea is to use that excess capacity for those 13 lots and that's what if you take the 295 or 2,925 and divide that by 13, it's 225 gallons, which is what we use as the number of gallons per day per EDU for the 13 units. And so you theoretically approved it when you, like I said, approved the land development plan. Wanted it to be a clear action by the board.
I'm sorry, I just have a question. This is not, so with this, we've taken this into account when Equus had come in to ask for that, right? So this is all part of that number thing that we're playing. Well, we're not playing, I'm sorry,
Sorry,
I shouldn't say that,
I
but
wanted
the numbers
available
that we are,
units.
yeah.
Yeah, this was taken into account, but this was, I talked with Dave Porter to make sure that Equus wasn't taking part of this, and they're not.
Okay,
That I want to be clear about. It
Okay.
was returned back to the township to use. And yes, this is available for use.
What happens, this goes to the DEP, the DEP tracks all these numbers.
right.
They just want to make sure, the capacity is not exceeded. Obviously, it doesn't work that way. And we have to get it to, allow the developer to get it to the DEP, so we're part of that process.
Right, and this is close to Melmark. I mean,
Yes, it's
it's on the same road,
on
right?
the same road. It's literally, I would think less than an eighth of a mile would separate the two pieces of property.
Opposed to, the Equus piece that's all the way down and, you know, they're cobbling together these numbers, so.
Any other discussion from the board?
I have a question.
Mr. Russo.
Did we ever resolve how he's connecting some utilities? Do we know where they're going through? He's got the water line getting connected in Echo Valley. He was talking about connecting the water line through Echo Valley because he didn't want to pay for an upgrade down White Horse Road. And my question is, where is he going through? Is he giving us an easement? And then where's he getting connected in Echo Valley? Because now we have a sewer line in there. And then I had a conversation with Pico about getting gas in that way, and they're saying there's nothing public. So I want to understand what he's going through. Is he dedicating a piece of property to the township as a paper street? How's he getting these utilities through?
Well, he has on his property, obviously, he's doing it as an easement. When you look back at the land development plan, there was an actual easement that it was going through, excuse me, down to the easement that's in Echo Valley.
Well, but he was bringing water originally. He never said anything about sewer. So
No,
now
I
we have
think
a
he
sewer
said
line.
sewer at the same time. That's why
No, sewer was supposedly going down the road. At least what I recall, there's only a water line. And the whole idea with the water line was he didn't want to pay for the upgrade that Carl said he had to do because of the volume.
And my understanding is that piece with the water is still being worked out because we had Aqua go out and relocate where the piece is. I haven't heard anything back.
The land development plan was approved with the water coming in from 252. You
But
did,
he's still negotiating that then.
you did allow him to try to work something else out and then come back to the board if something else worked out, but
He's still negotiating that.
he's still trying.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other board comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed?
Oh, we didn't make a motion.
Good job. Good job. All right. So is there a motion?
I just moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. 13.4, consider approving the chat box add to the website for ease of locating information at an amount of $4,500. Mr. Neese.
So move for approval.
Let's get, you do your thing first, Mr. Neese.
So I may defer, but as I understand this would be, if you see those little virtual boxes at the bottom of websites that say, you know, ask your question here or things like that, there would be a virtual little box at the bottom on our website for commonly asked type questions. And we could keep adding information to that, and it would guide people to the place on the website where they need to go. One of our biggest complaints that we get is that people don't always know where to find things on our website. They go through the search tool. I was using the search tool today and actually pulled up something that had been turned off. So the search tool still searched. I think it was because of the way I was logged in, but it was interesting to me that, you know, if you're not careful, you end up in a place that you're not necessarily wanting to go, because we have so much information on the website. But it's not that it's not there, people can't find it. And so this was a way to help people be able to find it. I will make note, I believe this is not $4,500 one time. I believe it's an ongoing cost of $4,500. Is that correct?
This year, it would be no cost. The renewal is actually the end of this year because of a promotion and our credit. It's $971 for the next year. Then the following renewal will be 45, but then at that point, it's $4,500 a year. And Steve is right. A lot of people say we can't find it. Rose and I sat through the demo. It makes a tremendous amount of sense. They can type in a question if they don't get the information that they want. And we can look at the verbiage that they use and train this chat box to, when you see this word, this is where you want it to go. So I really think it's going to be very helpful.
Can you also have it, because the city of Philadelphia, they have their permitting system is called Eclipse. And when you run into a problem from 9 to 11, they have someone actually live there, and you can actually put in a question, a specific question. Does this have the capability of ever doing that?
With a live individual, no.
Okay,
But the more we get specific verbiage, we can train it to send that person exactly to the spot.
it doesn't, any help that to
Yeah.
do, to help to navigate, because they're all different.
Is there like a minimum contract term that we're agreeing to when we approve this, or?
It's annually. So this, the way our renewal is the 29th of December. So we're talking, what, 6 weeks? No, more than that. Because we have a credit on the account and they are having a discount currently, I got them to put the discount toward the renewal coming up, not what we have right now.
So if we can, so next year you said it would be how much, like 900 or something?
Like 971, I believe is the amount. And then it will go, the following renewal goes to 4,500.
So can we approve it now for the 900 amount and then?
That
next
would
year-
get us to the end of 23, December 29th of 23. And then we'd have to renew on that date for the
Yeah.
following.
Do we want to do it for the?
Well,
okay?
I just wanted to make sure, I don't like surprises, and I wanted to make sure you didn't have a surprise. I didn't want you to approve it for 900 this time, and then turn around in next year and tell you that it's 4,500 for the same thing you thought you paid 900 for this year. The reason why it would be 900 this year is we have a credit that we're due back from them, and they would just apply that credit to what this is. But it's, the cost of it is actually 4,500. It's because we have the credit that we're only paying 900. If you want to approve it for the 900, that's fine. I just wanted you to be aware that the actual cost for this module is $4,500 per year.
So let me ask you this question, and I agree. I mean, we do hear all the time, people say that they don't know where the information is, and I think our website can be a little difficult to navigate. And what we've always been trained to kind of tell them is just go up to the search bar.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure, so we're not replacing the search bar with just a $4,500 expenditure. You guys are confident that this is going to be
Gonna
a
work much
search
better.
bar on steroids, essentially.
Right.
I'm taking the lead from Suzanne and Rose, who have gone and seen it. I've not seen it other than just a quick piece. I think that it makes sense, understanding, having seen those at the bottom of the website.
Yeah.
You know, if you need help with this, ask this question and we'll tell you where you're going and that kind of thing. Most of those are the same type of thing. It's not always an actual person on the other end. I do know they have times where they are, but a lot of times you're talking to a virtual
Yeah.
piece.
We can
Do we-
also make it that when
I-
you click on that box, there'll be 4 tabs, it's like permits, boom, they go right to permits without looking at anything further, general information, whatever, all be on that page.
Do we know if any other municipalities use this?
You know what, I don't know. Rose, do you remember? Were there? Oh, yeah, because Cranberry Township in Pittsburgh. And there was another township, it was kind of cute. They deal with water and their chat box was called Drip Bot.
No.
Like we can name it.
My,
whatever. What's that, Ed?
My, sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ed.
My company used this functionality and that's why I made the motion so fast. I think it would definitely, I agree with Steve 100% with our website. You know, it would make the navigation for people a lot easier. I think it's well worth the investment. You know, seeing it firsthand with my company.
perfect. All right, so Ed, you made a motion. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Russo. Is there any other board discussion? Seems like this is a good thing for ease of transparency as we continue to operate under that veil that we always have. So I think it's great. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 13.5 was tabled. 13.6, consider authorizing the solicitor to change the rental license ordinance to read the township staff will perform an inspection of all rental units when there is a tenant change in place of a landlord inspection with a fee of $75 / inspection, which includes the initial inspection and 1 follow-up inspection. If a third inspection is required, the inspection fee will be $50.
So if you'd like, I can speak to this for a minute first.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr.
Yeah.
Neese.
So I just want to tell you why we're proposing, this is a staff proposed change. Andy and I have been talking about this for a while. What we're finding is in the ordinance, it says that a landlord is to do an inspection. Obviously, every time that they have a changeover, and they're supposed to send us a copy of the inspection sheet when they've done that. The rental license or the rental ordinance has been in place for about 5 years. I asked Andy how many of those he's received, and I can count on one hand. I actually don't even need a hand. We've never gotten them. We've tried to push to get them. We're not getting them. This was at the request of the landlords. We put it in this way. They're not following through with what they need to be done. We feel like at the time of changeover, when there's a new tenant going in, there should be an inspection to make sure everything is up to code, in addition to our once every 5 years. It's a very common practice anywhere. And that's the reason why we want to put it in. It's not, we gave them a chance. They haven't been doing it. This is to go ahead and make sure it's done properly.
All right, let's get a motion and then we'll do board discussion. Is there? All right, so while the motion was made by Supervisor Russo, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any board discussion on this?
Yes.
Supervisor Russo, you were saying this is common?
99%.
This is common in 99% of the towns.
The, I guess for you, Mr. Sikora, well, I guess it's actually for Mr. Neese. Has there been any contact with any of these landlords since they've failed to follow through on this?
I know there was contact telling them they needed to do it. They've still not done it. This has not, I haven't ran this by the landlords. Are you okay with us doing this? Because I already know the answer. The answer is no, they're not okay with us doing this. But they're not performing as they've been asked to perform. And I know that they've been asked to do so. They've been reminded every year that they need to do it. When they send us a new tenant, we've said we didn't have an inspection sheet. We've never gotten them.
I'm sure this has been fleshed out, but just out of curiosity, and I think that Andy's on the call. I mean, do we have the staff to do this for all the rental units that we have?
So Andy and I talked about it. We believe that Zach, as part of what he's doing, this would probably be more than what he's doing now in regards to the number of rental unit inspections. However, it would also reduce so if we went and did one at the time in which the tenant changes, then the 5-year clock would start. Right now, the 5-year clock starts every 5, it's just always going, but it would do at the time in which the inspection's done. So we would actually replace some of the inspections that we're doing now, but it would be at the time that the tenant changed. I think that answers the question, but we think that there's capacity within Zach to do that.
Okay.
These are all in an apartment houses. This is not going to take a long time. He has a small list. He's gonna look around. He's gonna say, okay, it's good.
Yeah, he tells me he's there about 25 minutes. He's out, he comes back, he does the report. He sends the report out. It actually takes longer on the scheduling, and we would have somebody else assisting with the schedule.
How did they come up with the amount of the fee?
I took the time that Zach was out, the cost of the vehicle, the time that the staff will take doing the reporting on the other end. Roughly, that came out to, I think, about $73. And so I put it at 75.
The fee would actually put into the fee schedule, so that won't be part of the ordinance. The ability to charge a fee will be in the ordinance, but we'll put the dollar amount in the fee schedule so that can be adjusted from time to time as needed with that analysis.
So how does this work with regards to notice? Right? I mean, obviously, I guess if we approve the ordinance and then how will we start initiating our own inspections? Or how will these landlords know that we've revised this?
Well, we'll put them on notice. We'll send out to all the landlords. We know who they are because they send in a yearly piece. We'll do it with the new year. We would hopefully have, if our solicitor can get it done between now and the end of the year, I hope we have enough time we can do that. We would put it into a place on January 1. And if we put it into place on January 1, we think that would be, we would send it out with the rental license noticing putting them on notice that going forward, that's the expectation. We would also do a separate mailing. You know, they couldn't say, well, it was lost in my rental license. First thing, we would do a separate mailing to them. We know who they are.
But Rich, with regards to, since we're amending an ordinance, we don't have to advertise for this or anything?
Well, sure.
Oh, so what are we doing tonight? Are we
This would be, if
we're just
this-
authorizing you to move forward with drafting a new
and
ordinance?
getting it ready for you to do,
All right,
once you see it.
that should have been front and center there. That's what got me concerned, is that we were about to change this without going and got it.
I'm sorry,
I was
yeah, this
concerned
is,
about how we
this
get
is
it
changing the
done.
ordinance. It's,
Wouldn't let you do it if you want.
Thank you, Rich. That's where I was getting nervous. So we're just authorizing you to make these changes and then we'll go through the normal process.
correct.
Understood. All right.
Yeah, it was when this, sorry, when this was initiated, the rental inspection ordinance initiated in the first instance, there was a lot of public participation by a number of landlords. And one of the big things was the number of inspections and the claim that it was a hardship. And so the compromise by the township to implement what we consider was important for the safety of the residents, but trying to balance that against the hardship was to make it a self-certification upon change of tenant. And so that the township inspection was only, this once every 5 years. But since that wasn't working, I would imagine that once it's advertised, there'll be people complaining hardship again, but.
Understood. No, that, my concern was notice, so I'm fine with this now. If there's any other board discussion. You guys are all good to authorize them?
Yes.
All right. So the motion was made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. 13.7, discussion and approval to advertise the proposed 2023 budget. Mr. Neese.
Yes, so, your budget presentation's up. I'm going to go through, some of this rather quickly, other parts I'll go a little bit more slow. And then, if you have questions, feel free to ask as we go along. I think it will probably make it easier. Just so you all are aware, I just wanted you to see some inflation and contractual increases in the budget. And some of you had asked to see this. I just wanted to show you what are some of the things that we've been hit with on this budget. And
Aren't those locked in? Aren't the gas and diesel locked into a contract?
they are, but the contract went up 99% compared to what we were paying the year before.
It's a year by year contract?
It's a year-by-year contract.
And then how does recycle go up 3.4%? I thought we had a contract locked in.
That is the contract. That was the amount that it went up this year. So the contract was a three-year contract with built-in increases each year.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So if you quickly add that up, it's over $200,000 in increases in that one spot. So the next area that I want you to understand is when we presented the budget back, I believe it was 2 weeks ago that Rich presented, we had a gap of about $804,000. In that period of time, we've looked at some things, and I'm going to talk to you about some of those things that we've done. One is we looked at about $187,000 worth of fund balance usage, and I'll talk specifically what those are. We've increased revenue $182,000, and staff has also decreased expenses $111,000. So I'm going to talk through what those are real quick with you, so you know what changes that we've made to get us down to $300,000. First of all, the recommended use of fund balance. We said there are 4 things. Well, you could say 5 if you take both police officers, but there are 4 things that we saw that were really expenses that weren't going to be things that repeated every year. So for example, we've asked to do a replacement officer 6 months prior to the 2 officers retiring. That's going to cost us $136,000. There's another $6,000 for each of those officers for uniforms, but that's still in the budget because even if we don't replace them until June, we still have to pay the $6,000. So I kept that in the budget. This is just the amount that we would spend from January to June to have those officers here, getting them trained so that when the 2 officers retire, we're not down and just starting to train new officers. The fire company had asked for a $5,000 increase. That increase was specifically related to, I believe it's a pickup bid on a truck, was $5,000. And so that's not something that you're going to need to do every year. So we went ahead and put that there. If you'll recall, as we get done if we get the zoning rewrite done next year, we were supposed to start the land development rewrite. And so we had $40,000 that's been in the budget for that. Again, I would say that because that's not something that you do every year, you could take that out of fund balance and make that work. And then George spoke earlier tonight about the concept of having someone come in and help us with the leaf site to make sure we get that activated. Ultimately, that will save us way more than we will spend on that consultant, but we want to get the consultant in so we can do that. So that's how we got to that 187 that we're recommending as a use out of fund balance. And if you're okay with that, we'll take action to make that happen. But that was the point. Any questions on that? Everybody kind of understand what the purpose of those were? The next is we looked at some areas here, and I'm going to talk about the bigger ones. Some of them were small. These are areas in revenue that we've increased, trying to take a little bit more aggressive approach, knowing that we've underestimated revenue several years. And so I wanted to just kind of look at some places where pushing is out to my limit of comfort. But it's at the same time, we tend to have a little bit more revenue than we normally budget. And so I wanted to talk about those real quick. I'm going to talk about the main ones. The first one being the real estate interims.
Mr. Neese.
Yes.
I need to understand something here. We have all these townhomes or all these cluster homes where Ed's moving in, coming online. We have all this huge apartment building coming online, and we have only 35,000 tax dollars increasing.
No, that's in addition to what we already put in the budget is what I'm saying.
Well, no, but how do you count for these transfer budgets on these houses are $1 million a piece? Like, and I don't know how many are coming online this year.
Yeah, but so they may be $1 million a piece, but my guess is that your home value, and I know where you live, but let's say your home value, and I'm going to pick a number that I assume is low, but I'm going to say, let's assume your home is worth 500,000.
Yeah.
Your assessment on your home is probably about 300,000. So the assessment that we get on $1 million property will not be $1 million. It will be somewhere probably in the $600,000 to $700,000.
No, but the transfer tax is on that million. If it sells for $1 million, you get the transfer
The
tax. on
transfer
that.
tax we have built into we have that built.
But you're
into
only
the-
showing
But-
$16,000.
What I'm showing, and let me explain this again. This number that are on here, this 182,000 is the numbers that we've increased those line items. It's not, I increased it by 16,000. I increased the interims by 35. Going back and looking at it, we had the numbers that we presented to you last time, full detail what they were. I've come back, and Rich and I, before Rich left, we went back and we looked and said, where else can we come up with additional revenue to help offset some of this gap of this $800,000? So we already had in interims, I believe, 65,000. We've added 35. We already had real estate tax, transfer tax of $1 million. That's what we were anticipating. We've added 16. LST, I don't remember the exact amount. I think we were at about 700, and it was either 725 or 750, and we've added 26. I would mention that the LST ad has to do with the fact that we put in the budget this year for AmeriHealth to be back and in full. They didn't get back in full until July. So we've got that in there for next year, but we've also picked up Vanguard, has come into town. You know, you took over the Sunoco spot. So I put in that money for Vanguard. because Sunoco didn't have that many employees in. So we felt like we would pick up some dollars there. So the 26,000 is the out of Vanguard. The other numbers are pretty small until you get down to interest. We had interest budgeted, I believe, at about 25,000. Based on what you've allowed us to do with investing, we think we're going to get an additional 35,000 in interest. We are proposing to the municipal authority to make a larger contribution to the township administration based on the number of hours we're spending there, as well as to public works. And so that's what those two numbers are, the 33 and the 1,800. And then we went back, and the other numbers are pretty small. The other number that's a little bit larger there is the 10,000 for zoning. We put that back in. We had taken that out with the thought that the zoning rewrite would be done by the end of the year. It's not. It's probably not going to be done until middle of next year. So we put 10,000 back in under the zoning fees. So that's how we got that 182. Again, that 182 is in addition to the dollars that were already in the budget that when we presented the $800,000 gap.
To put another way, with that 180,000,
Well, I can go back up.
we're dropping that gap from 800,000 to 700,000, give or take.
Well, probably from 800,000 almost down to 600,000 because you're taking almost 200,000
200,
off.
yeah, good math, right?
And we took off 187 there above. And if you go back up to the first slide I did, if you go back up, Rose, that was not, was that it? Let's see that, yeah, that slide. So we started at the 804. I've already talked about using fund balance of 187. Just talked about increasing revenues 182. And I'm going to now talk about the decrease in expenses 111, almost 112.
Thank you.
Which will take us down to a gap of 322. Okay, so in the expense area, the first thing we did is when we first started budgeting, we were told by the finance committee was recommended that we budget the staff increases equal to what cost of living at that time. When I was doing Eastern Pennsylvania, or Southeastern Pennsylvania area, it was at almost 10%, it was 9.7. Social Security came in at 8.7. We came back and dropped that down to 8.5. That gave us a $43,000 savings. The advertising, we took out of the budget just based on what we've been using. The communications person, we had put in $25,000 a year. We're really coming much closer to about 9,000 to 10,000. So we reduced that 15. The other big one, the code inspector, because we're not having as many homes in Lissitor, we'll have no homes in Lissitor next year that aren't already fully inspected. And most of the homes, even on BPG, will be done. We've reduced that $20,000. The rest of the expenses, if you look through there, are pretty small. I will tell you a couple of those, we were hoping for a continued warm weather on the snow removal and snow overtime. Obviously, if that doesn't happen, then I'll be back to you telling you that we had a bad year and do that. But the thought was, we know what we've done the last 3 years, even though I have years in the past that it's been higher than that. We know what we've done the last 3 years, and that's kind of what we took a look at when we looked at all of these. In the past, particularly like snow and some of the others, even like signal repair, we did those based on mostly our worst year. And so we looked at the last 3 years and said, we've actually leveled out and we're doing better. We could be wrong, but it's a budget, right? And so I knew that 800,000 was too big of a gap. And so we were trying to reduce that gap. That's how we've done it. So those are the things the staff has done to get us down to 322,000. Any questions on those? The other thing that I did, it dropped off, I apologize. The other thing I did was I did pull the fund balance use out of the top on the revenues. So without the fund balance use, we were at 10,000,006 or 10,000,008. And then if you use the fund balance, that puts us over 11 million on revenues. And then if we look at, and it was in there twice, I'm not sure why. Oh, I did one with it. If you go down to the next one, I kept the fund balance at the top, and you can see the 11,049,000. So I just wanted you to be able to see it both ways and be able to understand that number of where that came from. In expenses, once all those adjustments, we can kind of go through both the different expense sheets, get down to the bottom. The thing that I pulled out, and this was a comment that Ed had made at the last meeting, was the interfund transfers, just to give you a comparison so that you can see proposed versus what we have going into next year in expenses and see where we are, and keeping all things equal, see where the numbers are in that way. When we come down, I'm going to go ahead and jump down, keep moving it. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I want to talk about what's in the budget personnel wise. The police contract is 3.25. As I showed you, I think up above, it actually works out to about 4.6, I think, based on all the different things that happen with longevity pay and everything else like that. Non-uniform is at the 8.5. 2 replacement officers for the 6 months was the 136. The new officer is 142. We have the additional, the staff person that you approved and the municipal authority approved at their meeting of 27. The additional public part-time codes staff at 22. And then we have 2 interns at 20. And those were what's in the budget personnel. If you look at where we are, we said we were at 322. Wanted you to see where we were with their fund balance. Fund balance at the beginning of this year was at 5,277 or 278. And when you add in our revenue and our expenses, and that includes the transfer, we drop down to 4,840,000. If we take our fund balance and policy that we've committed and keeping 25% of our fund balance of the expenses for the next year, that's 283. And so that's in the budget, or not in the budget, but there it leaves you $2,010,000. So when you subtract the 187 that the staff recommends that you take from fund balance, it takes you down to 1,822,000. Just so you can understand that available fund balance for you. Any questions on the general fund? So some possibilities that I want to talk through, and I just want to go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. There's some possibilities that the staff didn't feel comfortable actually making a decision on, but we said, here's some things we could think about that would be another $79,000. So if you'll recall, I think I mentioned this maybe at the last meeting, when we put in postage last year, we put in postage with the assumption that we were going to be doing additional newsletters. That's not happened. If we wanted to wait another year to get back to 8 newsletters or get to 8 newsletters instead of being at 4, we know we could save $20,000. We were supposed to be working with the school district. We've not heard anything back from them. So we could do that.
That postage cuts it from 8 to 4 and you get
It keeps it at the 4 that we have right now. We just don't get to expand to the 8 like we were trying to do. There's 20,000 that we put in for summer help for public works. And so just so you kind of understand, we put in for 4 this year. When George went out to hire, he actually only had 2 people that he was able to hire. And so we said, well, as much as we think we need 4, we could potentially make a decision to save in the budget another 20,000. It's not necessarily something we love doing. It's something that we consider, and we're throwing it out there. Field improvements, this was to actually improve our soccer fields and our baseball fields and move them up to another level. There's actually money in the capital fund to help with this as well, but it was going to be $20,000 a year to maintain the baseball field at Brookside and the 2 soccer fields at Drexel Lodge. And that's using an outside source to do that. We don't have enough resources in-house to maintain them at that level. The community event, we've been putting $20,000 into there. We thought we could potentially take out the 10,000 because we're going to do some of that in-house, and we're going to put that event on through staff and working with Gather in the Circle, and we think we can do that for about 10,000 based on what they've asked for and what we know the event's going to cost. They did ask for, I believe the Business Association through Paul asked for $1,000 for banners. We don't have them this year. If you chose to put them off another year, you could. My understanding, and Arlene, if this is not right, you correct me, please. I got this from Rich, is that the 7,000 that the library asked for an increase, they have gotten money from the state or are getting money from the state on that. Is that correct? Okay. Will it cover that? It could cover that. So that was the idea behind that. It's not that we're not saying the salaries that the library don't deserve to happen. My understanding was there was another potential funding source, and that was where that came from. The American in Bloom dues, I don't think we've done anything really with them for the last 2 years. And maybe Newtown Square and Bloom, we plans on doing something else, but we haven't had them come. We haven't had them do anything. We haven't taken action on anything. And so those were the reasons for those. It came up to $79,000. We're not saying you should do all of those. We're just saying those are possibles that you could consider.
The American and Bloom one.
Steve,
I
these,
attended that meeting I guess on Monday or Tuesday of last week, Wednesday of last week. And I think that they are moving forward with their dues.
Okay.
But I don't know if it's the full amount. I think they're doing the digital at 650 or something like that, 300. I'm looking at George. It wasn't the full amount, whatever we budgeted for.
Okay.
You just might want to confirm that.
Okay. So we could potentially cut that back.
Yeah.
And do that.
Steve,
So again, that's a possibility to look at. You know, if we're looking at getting from 322, how do we get down further? Other things that we have in the budget that potentially are places, again, this is for you all to discuss. We have the grant writer built into the budget. We have new police officer. We have the fire replacement program that we put into place. The part-time codes employee, the 25,000 for the public works replacement program that we've been working on. We found that potentially there's $2,000 in tree removal, playground equipment replacement program. And then if the Historic Commission, being new, has requested a $7,000 budget. And so if we took that into account, obviously we have to add that back in. And that has been since we presented you the numbers. And so those are some things for board discussion of ways. Obviously, if I add those two numbers together, that's greater than our deficit of 322. I think there's about $14,000 if I remember right.
So this second page of items for board discussion are also items for us to potentially remove.
I mean, it's up to you, right? I mean, I'm just saying there are items that are to consider. They're new items that were not in the budget in 2021.
Okay.
Yes.
there's a model where the deficit is 223, 392.65.
That's if you take action on the 79,000.
The 79 would get us there.
Yes.
And then the things you just mentioned recently would be reductions to that.
That's correct.
Okay.
So,
So I'm just gonna throw my opinion is, the things that you just mentioned that would add to that, in my opinion, is maybe we can analyze that stuff more. But my opinion is to take the 79 and advertise it at the 223, 392 deficit to advertise the budget with that deficit. So that's just my opinion.
And that 223, 392.65 is what we get when we take out the 79,280. Is that what that is?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. All right, keep going, Steve.
So that's your, I think that if I'm, that's street light.
Can you explain? Is that gonna cover the light replacement?
That does.
So by adjusting that to 0.0012, no money coming out of the budget other than what's already get collected.
Well, it's changing the millage for the streetlight district, but
Didn't you say you have to replace like $60,000 worth of lights? Or there's a number of lights that have to be replaced?
so the idea was kind of like you've created the road program where we put $50,000 aside.
Right.
The idea was in 2020, and if I go down a little bit further,
Well, my concern is if a good portion of this town does not have streetlights. So if we're gonna spend money, capital money to replace streetlights, the people that have streetlights should pay for that. The people that don't shouldn't pay for that. I don't think it's fair to ask somebody.
that is exactly how it
That's
works.
how it's set
Well,
up.
that's what I'm asking.
It's a separate tax.
No, but.
This is the streetlight fund. You were, if you asked me to move down and we did,
Right,
but this is the streetlight fund.
Is the $64,000, 528 that you're proposing to be spent next year on streetlights, is that gonna be captured with the millage change?
The millage change that's at the top of this that I just did, that would be, yes, that would be captured.
So
in
that's neutral.
Well, it's an increase of,
No, but what I'm saying is it's not adding to the bottom of the budget.
it's not adding to the bottom of the general fund budget. It is
Right,
not.
okay.
I just
so-
want to be
No,
clear.
It's an increase, but it's only an increase for people who have streetlights.
That is correct.
That's fine.
Okay, I just
Thank you.
wanted to make sure I just want to make sure I'm being clear what I'm communicating. So just question, are you comfortable with me moving forward or do you want to address general fund and then move on?
What does the board, so when you say you're comfortable moving forward, meaning, are we okay with the 79,280 cuts? Is that what you're asking for?
Well,
again?
I mean, I know that's what Ed's proposing. I'm asking, do you want to discuss the general fund now before I muddy the waters with everything else? Or do you want to go through the entire thing and then come back and discuss each one and then go from there?
What does the board prefer?
I think we should do with the general fund now.
That's one suggestion, and that's the only one we're hearing, so I think we go with it.
Okay,
So we're talking about the general fund now. Ed, you want to lead it off?
Yeah, I mean, my proposal is to advertise the budget at the $223,392 $1.65 deficit of expenses over revenue, which actually at this point in time, to close that deficit, one way to do that would be to increase taxes at 3.58%. I'm certainly not in favor of that, but I think it's a starting point, and then we can work on improving that deficit, lowering that deficit, over the next 4 or 5 weeks. So that would be my proposal to start with the deficit of 223K.
You can ask a question. If we advertise what Ed's suggesting with taking the 79 out, and does that still give us the flexibility to, if we want to, and I'm not passing judgment either way, but to remove those other items
Yeah, I believe in Rich, on the legal side, I believe you can always reduce expenses. That's not a problem, and I don't think it matters what percentage you reduce expenses in and of itself. The place where we can't get too far out of whack is it's a 10% overall adjustment on the budget, which we're well within, even if you were to take out the entire 250,000. Or 25% of any one line. And I think we're fine on those.
So with regard to the budget,
And you can still do that, you just have to re-advertise within 10 days before passing.
We have flexibility.
You have flexibility, yes.
you good with that? Okay. Coming from the school district, I know it's a drastically different ball.
Yeah,
ball game.
and that's why I wanted to make sure we're clear in how we explain those things.
Yeah. Anyone else with, from the board with regards to the elimination of the 79,280 as recommended by staff? Okay, Mr. Rosenthal, do you want to add something to the general fund now?
I would like to, yeah, and I'll just reserve my comments to restrict them to the general fund discussion. The first of which is the opening slide, which I think Stephen led off with. The things that are not under the control of anybody here in the township or the supervisors, that accounts for less than 2% of the overall expense budget, which means 98% is basically controllable by the people in this room. Just as a little bit of a backdrop, the consolidated update that's on page 3, and I numbered them, the slides weren't numbered, but the one that says the consolidated update, that you know, I guess the process over the past 2 months led up to a projected deficit of about $804,000. I guess we could or couldn't move the $187,000 and apply it directly to the general fund. Could have left it in the budget and the deficit would have had to be dealt with anyhow. We could have put more into that 187,000, not just the 4 items that were listed on page 4. It's discretionary to some extent. The money eventually settles against.
So the answer is the board has the right to use any amount of general fund it wishes to. The staff's recommendation here, we don't typically recommend using fund balance to balance the budget unless we see it as a one-time expense. And that's the reason why we made that recommendation this way.
Right, but things like field improvements and things that are not normal operating expenses could easily have been moved there as well.
Well, I would just say the field, let me just clarify, the field improvements that we had there was, and George, correct me if I'm wrong, was to be an increase to the budget that would be a yearly increase to the budget going forward if we committed to it. And that's why it was.
Got it. Okay, that's fair. I didn't know we were going to have the interactivity, which is good. I prefer that. So I was making bold statements knowing I wasn't going to have a Q&A here. So the revenue update that you provided there, if you actually go back to the detail of where we are projected for 2022, and I think those detailed pages are probably September 30th. It doesn't say it at the top of the column. It's slide number 7.
I know Rich did those before he left. I do not know the date that he used.
There are 4 categories I would highlight: the other taxes, other financing sources, public safety, and business licenses. If it's September 30th, we've got 3 months to basically double revenue collections in those 4 categories. So I only highlight that as our starting point. We have to do a lot of collections over the next 3 months to achieve the starting point that this budget starts at. So I'll leave that as a comment. I don't think we need to discuss it. Somebody else can follow up and make sure that they're comfortable with that.
If I can make one comment, I just would make for you, we're going to do I say we, it's probably going to be me, but we're going to do a public budget workshop, assuming the board gives us approval to advertise tonight. One of the things I'm going to do is we're going to do a public budget workshop to go through everything here and open it up for full questions. And I would, I mean, I'm happy to go and answer everyone,
Right.
but I don't want to be just making.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to ask questions necessarily just for information, because your presentation answered a lot of my questions that I'm not going to ask now. I'm just trying to highlight for the supervisors issues that I think may be of interest just before you advertise this budget, because when you advertise, I guess it's for the most part baked. And final. Just in terms of clarity, on page 11, where you had the personnel items, you pulled out the 2 replacement officers, so it's actually not in the budget. You're funding that through the general fund. It's not part of the budget.
I would just make note that it is the budget. We're just funding it from,
Okay.
we're funding it from fund balance.
Right, and okay, so the difference I see is that if there's a deficit, you can cover it either with effectively the general fund or millage increase.
That's correct.
Okay, that I wanted to be clear on. On page 12, where you did that reconciliation of the general fund, that one right there. We start off with 5.2 million in the fund. Was there any curtailment against that at that moment in time, January 1st, 2022? I could rephrase it as a statement and move on if you'd like. But the reason I ask is because you showed that 2.8 million sort of curtailment at the end.
I showed it at the end. We take it out at the beginning as well,
Got it.
I wanted, some would argue it's there and they want to see the whole amount.
Right.
I tried to show what the whole amount was prior to taking out the 28 that we set aside for having 25% of our fund balance available to address anything at any time as we have need.
And not knowing the policy of this board or prior boards, but taking the fund balance from 5.2 million down to 1.8 million is a dramatic reduction in fund balance.
I think it's better to look at it from, and I apologize if I'm.
Yeah, I'm just going to call them out. You guys could follow up.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it's better to look at it from going from 2.010 million to 1.8 million, or if you wanted to go back and subtract out 2.8
That's why I asked about that.
5.2. I just want to be clear so that you're comparing an apple to an apple.
Okay.
And not, mixing the two together.
Finally, I'll just rush this along now. The additional cuts that you're proposing of 79,000, again, that's less than 1% of the total expense budget. It's not a whole lot of money, and to me, the 6 or 7 items that are on here don't seem to be wastes or anything. In fact, they may enhance the community and make a number of residents somewhat happy. So to take 0.7% out of the overall budget really doesn't do much in terms of impact on potential millage increases. I'd also, say the same thing about just your brief summary about items for board discussion. Those are really meaningful things that somebody has put into the budget. And I'd look for the supervisors to sustain those. I know you're not going through the capital budget right now, and I'm going to step away, but there is a typo on the last page of the deck, capital fund expense, not fuels. So. Anyhow,
Thank you, Louis.
thanks.
Okay. So I think you have the direction from the board to move forward with Arlene, go ahead. Yes, you can.
So I'm clear about that 7,000 that we're getting from the state. Back in 2008, 2009, the state cut library aid by 30%. And this is an attempt to make us whole again. It's a 17% increase now from them. And expenses have gone up a lot at the library. So I really ask that you keep the library salary increase in place and not remove it as part of trying to get the budget balanced because we have great staff and they're new staff and I'd like to keep them. So I just didn't want to let this moment go by without saying that it's really important to us that we still have that 7,000.
Got it.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. So with that being said, we have the proposal by Supervisor Partridge to move forward with the reduction in the 79,280 that would have us advertise.
7,000.
You were taking the words right out of my mouth, Mr.
Ed,
Russo.
can I ask you if you're amendable to adding the $7,000 into the library salary increase?
Ed,
Well, no, I didn't hear your question, Mike. What was it? Or your
the
statement?
question was.
So the $7,000 that we originally were gonna take out, the increase in salaries for the library, Arlene got up and said that she would like us to put that back in, $7,000. Are you okay with putting that back in to revise that number, including $7,000 more?
Yeah, that's fine, because we're gonna find,
Okay.
we're gonna improve on this anyway. So, yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I don't even know if we really need to.
Well,
Do we need to put it back in to commit to her, Steve?
yeah.
392.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Yeah,
And
all right.
I second that
You
motion.
can say whatever you want.
And I'll second the motion with the 230, whatever Denise just said.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, so you have that
For the general
part
part.
covered for the general fund, Mr.
Yep.
Dees.
So I'm going to go ahead and if you're okay, I'm going to do everything else down to the capital fund real quickly. If you have a question, that nothing's really changed there. And so I just want to go through and just go through those. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask as I go along. We've already talked a little bit about the street light. It does take into account the 14,000. The idea is to grow the fund balance there so that when it's time to replace those streetlights, we're ready to do so versus having to do what we did this time, which is we borrowed money to do the streetlight project. We did borrow it from ourselves, but that was the plan. Interestingly enough, the way the hydrant lease is working, we're actually dropping the hydrant. It doesn't necessarily equal the same for every person because more people have streetlights than have hydrants. I think I'm saying that right. However, we are dropping the hydrant a little bit, and that's because we don't need that much of a fund balance for the hydrant. And so we're looking at where we are with real estate taxes and the interest 100. And then you can see we're at 100. I think it's a gap of, I don't know, like $300,000, I mean, $300. And then we're suggesting dropping a little bit more out of that and bringing down to, and that number's wrong. I apologize. I need to, I didn't check that number. The 8 should not be there. It's in the wrong spot. I apologize. The ARPA funds we had talked about at the last meeting. There's some interest in there. We're spending down, and the intention is to spend all of it down over the next year. If you recall, we're spending money currently on the Echo Valley Culvert project. I think the other project we're looking at is over off of North Line Road. And I'll be working with Panoni over the next, our engineer to start putting that project together. If you'll remember, that was the project that we originally started talking about, and there were all of the conflicts in the road to make stormwater in that area. So we're going to look at that and see if we come up with a process that'll work well there. And so ARPA funds at the end of the day, I think he's saying we might have about $2,600 left. I suspect it'll be less than that, depending on the project that comes back. We have some dollars in the notes proceeds. And if I look down, we have, I think 55,000. We intend to spend that 55,000 down on the roof. And we would be done, and that would be nothing down. The bond proceed money is a similar situation. Actually, I think I got that backwards. The note proceeds was the road program, I'm sorry, which we have plans for next year. The bond proceeds was the building, and we want to put the roof on the building and do the guttering, and that'll more than wipe out what's left there and do that. So that also will be spent down. The war on drugs, that's the money that we had gotten in the past. We haven't really gotten much money in there over the last couple of years. This here was being spent on the, I believe the remaining value was the replacement vehicle in the police area. That it's the gap between what the insurance is paying and what we're paying.
Did you see there's a grant program for hybrid vehicles? Aren't we looking at a hybrid police vehicle?
We did get a hybrid vehicle. We didn't get it through a grant though. I don't.
Well, for next year's vehicle, if we're gonna look at, we want to look at that.
Yeah. So again, the war on drugs, we get down, we'll be down to about next to nothing in that account as well. Police donations, this is whenever somebody donates to something in the police department. Again, we've been buying bulletproof vests over the years. I think they're 1,500 an officer. So I think next year we would be doing 4, and we just do so many every year out of this account. As you can see, that account's starting to get low or lower, and we keep using it and doing that. Open space, this is money that's been given to the township to take care of open space. And I think, again, we're looking at spending roughly about $30,000. We put in for a grant for the parking lot. I think the grant is $10,000. And then we would look at spending 20 of the actual piece here for that. If we don't get the grant, we still think we need to do it. So we budget the whole amount, and that will take us down to 61,000 at the end of 2023. The stormwater, this is where people I should say, don't give us money, but they pay money for the purposes of having the stormwater inspections on their lots for 10 years. And that's the money that this is, and we keep that separate, so we make sure we track that and do that properly. And so we anticipate getting some money in, and obviously spending out 50,000, and that will take us down to 213,000 in that account that we're holding for those inspections. Liquid fuels. We believe we know what we're going to get. They told us we're going to get 433,000 plus about 2,000 in interest, and we plan on spending 511. And if you look at where our fund balance is, where we are with our fund balance, we come down. We would still have 138,000, and that'll help us get through 3 more years of making the payments, because the payments to, if you recall, we took a loan to do the 2020 road program. Those payments are about 511,000 every year. The revenue coming in from the state's about 430. That gap, we'll keep doing that, and eventually that number will be gone. And then once, just about the time the loan's done, and then we start back up, and we'll get back to the spot. We're having 800 every year, 400 from the state, 400 from you, and we'll be able to go back to doing the road program like we've been doing it in the past. I was asked about the road program. We intend to still do potentially using what we have in capital fund to going back. I think we presented something to you 3 meetings ago, I think it was now, related to some potential roads, Barron Road, and what's the other one over there, George, that we were looking at? That area, Rockwood. We would do that area, and in addition to that, we've set aside some dollars to look at Springton Point, Frog Hollow, and Sleepy Hollow Road. Sorry, this is the capital fund. We have some dollars set in for potential grants and also for some operating transfers that we budgeted in the general fund. And then we have our expenses into each line item. And then down here, you can see all of the different items that we actually have in the different sections of the capital fund with a total of 3,683,000 plus. Yep. Is that, you want me to go up further?
What's going on with Valley Ford Road Bridge? What we're getting a grant.
We are still looking for a grant on the state with that. There's a grant funding coming out in the next, I think it's 2 months that we're going to be applying for that one. Potentially, yes. Right now, I would tell you, we were told when the bridge was fixed, it had 1 to 2 years. We're looking at it. George is watching it, I think, weekly, if not weekly, at least once a month. And we think that repair is going to last longer than 2 years. So we would not spend that money until we got the grant dollars. That is all on Newtown side. Radnor folks use it quite a bit, but it's not at a spot where it's shared. It's all on Newtown side. So I think without pulling it up on a map, but if you're up on, is it Church? Yeah. If you're up on Church Road, if you know where that is, if you come out on St. David's and you go to the left instead of going to the right, you would come back and about a quarter of a mile is a turn onto Valley Ford Road, Forge Road, and it's that bridge that goes over there. It's interesting because the bridge sits in Newtown Township, but once you're over the bridge, probably 500 feet, maybe a little bit more, you're into Radnor.
A weird little corner of the town.
It's just well, I mean, some people come in over off of,
Well, if this bridge was shut down, how do people get in and out? There's another way to go?
they did come in and out another way. They went in through Easttown and they went in through Radnor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. That's pretty much all I have on the, I actually went all the way through the capital too, so you can see where we are.
Perfect. Is there any questions from the board with related to the capital budget? And before, I guess, any of us talk, do you need any action from us with regards to the capital budget?
If I would hope that you would approve us advertising, try to speak tonight. I would hope you would approve us advertising the entire budget. Because I don't want to be passing the general fund and then coming back and having to pass the other. We have to pass our budget by the end of December for what we're going to do for 2023.
Yep.
And so my hope would be that we would advertise it. You would be able to take public comment through the public comment period. You could make adjustments accordingly. I will tell you the capital fund, other than about 600,000, is all funded out of money that's already in the capital fund.
Got it. Is there any questions from the board or comments from?
Yeah, question. Steve, can you hear me?
Mr. Partridge, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, Steve, can you hear me? Sorry, I was on mute. On slide 50,
Yep.
which is the capital summary. So the 4,384,973, the projected fund balance, that's unrestricted, right? The 4.3 million is unrestricted.
That's unrestricted at the end of 2023.
Yeah, that's unrestricted. That doesn't take into account the committed fund of almost 2.9 million, right?
It does not.
Right, so total,
It doesn't take in our fund balance policy of $1 million either.
okay, so total capital would be over 8 million. The 2.9.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, good. No, that's good. Thanks, Steve.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, if there's any public comment, no public comment. All right. So. Was there, Suzanne, do you remember if we made a motion and a second for this, or did we not do that?
You do not, you had a motion, a second, and a vote on the general funds. You've taken no action on anything beyond the general.
Okay. So we did take a vote on
Do you
that.
want these in one motion, Steve?
You could go back and make them in one motion, but I understand what you want from the general funds. You could do the remaining funds as presented, and I could do it that way,
Yeah.
or however you want to do it.
Let's do that. I think it's easier, right? Supervisor Partridge, just do it as
Two-
presented.
Two motions, right? So we have the one motion with revenues advertised at $11,049,045 and expenses advertised at $11,279,438. So that would be for the operating fund. That would be my motion.
I
Steve,
believe.
you good with those numbers?
I actually believe you already made a motion on the general fund and approved it.
Yeah, it's done.
And so I don't think you need to go back and do that one. I think what I would be looking for, and Rich is shaking his head, yes. That what we're looking for is a motion on the remaining funds being advertised as presented.
And I'll make that motion to advertise them as presented.
Perfect. And that was on the other one. So Supervisor Partridge made the motion to to approve the capital as presented. Is there a second?
It's remaining all funds.
The remaining Supervisor Partridge made a motion to approve the remaining funds as presented for approval for advertisement. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any other additional board comment? There's no other public comment. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. And that concludes 13.7. We'll now move down to old business. There is no old business. We'll move to section 15, resolutions of legislation and action. Consider approve 15.1, consider approving resolution 2020-33 grant resolution. I do not have a copy of the grant resolution.
That is going to be removed from the agenda.
We're removing that.
Diane.
You want me to table that or just remove it?
I'm going to have you remove it just in case we get out of order, and then we can put it back in.
I don't need to vote on that or anything, do I, Rich? Okay, that's removed. Any board comment? Any public comment? Mr. Glazer?
Nathan Glazer, 3538 Cayley Road. Two items. One is more a bit of an annoyance. We're in leaf pickup. I was talking to George Sharretts about that. And I've already noted the number of residents who either are ignorant or careless or both, mostly ignorant, that are dumping their leaves on the streets. I live in the St. Albans area and the street widths are being narrowed. There's people just dumping them into the lanes instead of keeping them on the side of their property, which is where I understand the ordinance says they're supposed to be. And I would like to ask if there is some way to motivate residents to obey this and stop making the roads less passable, particularly in the older neighborhoods where street widths are a little constrained. If it was up to me, I would ask the police to knock on a door and just say, do something about your leaves, and, kind of just, suggest that there could be some more serious repercussions. But again, how I don't wish I had a great answer. I only know that it creates a hazard, and it's going to get worse as we get more and more into leaf, because some residents, it's 2, 3, 4 feet out into the road. Okay, that's just a kvetch, so leave it at that. My second item is a little more structural. We provide for, as the township provides for taxation for hydrant systems, which is good. And the current system says that the hydrant cost is borne exclusively by properties that are 780 feet from the hydrant. So you kind of draw a radius around that. That actually implies a bit of a falsehood, because if a property incurs fire that's more than 700 feet, that hydrant is still used. Now, the section 1802 of the second class township code does permit the payment of the hydrant fees out of the general fund. So instead of being targeted at the people who are specific distances, everybody shares in it, because frankly, everybody is benefiting. Nobody who has a fire doesn't get water because they're more than 700 feet from a hydrant. So why not essentially apply a principle of distributive justice and say, you all benefit from hydrants, therefore you all should help pay. And that just distributes a cost over a greater number of people, but it represents the reality of the use of the product. That is, the hydrants are used by every property owner who incurs the need. Nobody says, I can't give you water because you're more than 700 feet from a hydrant. And my memory is that the township did something very similar to this with the streetlights. The streetlights used to be assessed strictly based on proximity. And I thought, sorry, I could be wrong, but I thought several years ago that was changed to a broader base assessment. Again.
So I actually think it was the other way. I think the township was bearing more of the cost on the general fund. We put it more out to those who were directly benefiting,
Okay.
except for a portion that we continue to put for everybody related to particularly areas like Westchester Pike.
Okay.
And 252.
I just remember there had been discussion.
You're
that
right
shifted.
about that, and we just shifted some back. To the
Okay, I remember the
streetlight fund.
discussion. I thought it basically
Yeah.
took a different approach. But again, my basic thesis is that the hydrant assessment would be, there'd be more fairness if we simply distribute it over everybody, because everybody benefits, rather than selectively assigning it to people just by virtue of their proximity to this element of infrastructure. It doesn't, I mean, I'm not saying anything about the amounts, so I'm not posing anything on the budget or how much it is. It's more a question of how is it assessed against residents.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Glazer. Any other public comments? With that being said, I will double check at this plan for this. I don't think there's anything else, right? I will make a motion to adjourn. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all. So quiet.
All right, Ed, I'm gonna hang up.
All right, thanks. Good night.